Back in the discussion is one of my favorite people, one of my best friends, Eddie Cartwright. He's got a new book out. It's called Collections of Stories. And I can't wait to read it, but we're gonna get a preview today and maybe some other stuff.
I take credit, maybe I don't need to, for Dee. He came to work with us at the chalet when he was a little boy, and I watched him hustle for those tips. I had 2 or 3 that would actually take the customer and show them where to park, take their luggage in, and then have you hand out for a tip. Anyway, some would do that, of course, and do a good job. But Dee would not only do that, but he'd run back because he's afraid he's going to miss that next one coming in. Get that tip, make that money.
You know what I remember? One of the most things I remember about that is I had corduroy pants and those hush puppy shoes. You know, they had the real gummy bottom.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you can buy those anymore. But
well, you always look nice. That helped.
Yeah, it did. You know, back then it was a real thing to, you know, they'd hand you the key and you'd say drive around here and you'd run up that little hill and they'd be following you. And that was a real sort of a respect of the customer sort of thing.
It was, and I'll have to say this: the whole team we had out there at the chalet, from Jimmy Corn down, made it the end place. It was a happening place. We had a good banquet room where we had a lot of parties booked. We had the pub where you could get a cold adult beverage.
The Warthog?
And then, well, Jimmy went on a safari to Africa, and he killed some animals, as you do on a safari. And he had a warthog head stuffed, and he brought it home, and it was an ugly rascal. And he decided that he'd enclose the balcony off the pub and make another room. And he put a fake fireplace in there, and we hung that warthog head over that fireplace, and we named that place the Warthog Room. And what we did different in there is old Wayne Lority that cooked in the restaurant, he made pizza up there, and we sold pizza. We had pizza to eat in and pizza to go.
Pizza to go.
Yeah, and
that was before pizza was.
That's right.
They did that.
That's right, and it was then we had 150 rooms, and they were nice, and we kept them nice. Mm-hmm. Good housekeeping, and had a nice pool. We had a lot of folks that we had invited that live locally to come use the pool. Everybody didn't have a pool back in 1968 when it was built. And we had a lot of good-looking young ladies that came and used the pool, and that never hurts to have good-looking young ladies.
Was the Corns there, Donna and Laura? Did they swim?
Yes, some, but not near as much as we had some Cleveland High and Bradley majorettes and cheerleaders that we had issued an invitation to. And a lot of them used it, and then I know one time Jimmy Corn, who was principal stockholder, as you know, came in, and I'd hired Melanie Howell at the front desk, and of course Melanie was a very attractive young lady, and he took me back in the back office, and he said, "I've got a question." I said, "What is it?" He said, "Where in the world do you find all these good-looking young ladies?" I said, "Well, I don't know where I find them, but I know this. You can hire one that looks good just as cheap as you can hire an ugly one." And I did try to, I had Judy Harris that was in Wild River, and The young lady that went to Cleveland, that her dad ran the airport. Well, anyway, she was the head majorette at Cleveland High School. She's an airline stewardess now, might even be retired by now. But I had really nice looking folks, and I usually had an older lady there kind of as an anchor. Mm-hmm. You know, I had Mary Frances Park, mm-hmm. and I had in the daytime, I had Miss Buckner, Henry Buckner's wife. Mm-hmm. Her nickname was Toots. And
Henry Buckner. Is that Terry's daddy?
That's Terry's daddy.
So his mother worked there?
His mother worked for me at the Chalet.
Didn't she later work at the Merchants?
I don't know about that, but she worked for me at the Chalet. And, of course, Roy Lee Stepp's wife that passed away, she was, I guess, one of the first ones I had at the front desk. But I had good team. I had Barbara in the restaurant.
Barbara, I remember Barbara.
And I told Barbara one time, she's a great restaurant manager, but she played about as hard as she worked. I said, Barbara, what I like about you, and bless her heart, she's deceased now, but I said, you work hard, but I'll have to say this, you played just as hard as you worked. And she just grinned and kept working.
What did Roy died? What, about 2 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, maybe not even that long.
Boy, he was a tough old dude, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. Good guy, too.
Did he smoke up until the time he died?
No, I don't think so. He quit a ways back. I don't know how far back, but he quit.
Not 10 years back, maybe 2 years. Or
5 years, maybe. Yeah, he couldn't breathe, and he said, I'm going to have to quit smoking, and he did. And he recuperated a little bit, you know, and he was on oxygen, but he was still coming to the Liars
Yeah,
table.
he brought the oxygen with him.
That's right. That's right.
Did you go to Roger Hanger's?
No, I didn't. I went to Ed Lewis.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah.
Yeah.
What time was you there?
Yeah.
Was you there at the funeral?
No, I went to the visitation.
That's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't remember what time.
Well, Mike's got a long
beard.
I didn't hardly recognize
He
him.
came to the Liars table the morning that Ed died that day, mm-hmm. and he said, I think my dad would like to buy everybody's coffee today. And he bought everybody's coffee at the table. And I really hated to lose Roadman.
Oh, I did too.
Nickname I hung on him years ago. He was in and out of that road job 2 or 3 times. And so we started calling him Roadman. And I tell you a quick story about old Ed. Maybe Jody Lauderdale died. Well, he did die, but maybe this is the way this happened. And the county commission had to appoint somebody to fill out his term. And it was between my uncle, Milford Miller, who was on the commission, and Ed Lewis. 2 good guys. Mm-hmm. And Ed needed 1 vote to have the majority, and he didn't have it. Ed was smart enough to realize that the superintendent over the workhouse, they had the county workhouse back then, was on the commission, was going to have a vote, and he was for my uncle, Milford Miller. Ed went to see him, and he said, how much you make a month? And he told him how much he make, and Ed was going to be over the workhouse if he was the road man. And he said, if I get elected, you'll get a $25 a week raise. Ed got elected. Roadman was sharp.
He was sharp.
He knew how to. He took me, we were both running, excuse me, and Ed said, let's go to Charleston tonight. I've got a place or two. We'll go politic. I don't know if you ever heard of the Hole in the Ground or not.
I don't think so.
Well, there's a Mr. Phillips that owned a pretty nice house in the African-American section of Charleston. And he had a basement, and it had an outside door. And he had him a little night spot.
Huh.
and he sold beer, and he probably sold, and it was before it was legal to sell
Yeah.
the hard stuff. But he had a little hard stuff he sold too, because that was one of the things that Ed took me there, and we went in, and it's pretty dark in there, and I drank a glass of wine, but I'm not much I don't drink the hard stuff, and I don't like beer. Well, when I went through the door, first thing he did was shove a can of Country Club malt liquor beer in. I don't know what's good and what isn't. I figure Budweiser and some of those are better.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, and they'd already popped the top and handed it to me, so I nursed that thing. We was there about 30 minutes, and I carried it around with me. But it was a black night spot, I guess is no other way to describe it. And they had a little card, and it was the night before the election. And on that card, they had everybody's name that Mr. Phillips wanted them to vote for the next day. And they had haulers lined up to haul them to the polls. And so Ed said, what would it take for Mr. Cartwright and I to be on your list? And they had all Democrats on there, and Ed and I was Republican. And I knew we wasn't going to get a vote. He said, you've made the effort to come up here and ask us to vote for you, and said your opponent hasn't. And he said, a little donation would help pay the haulers. So I don't remember what Ed and I gave him, not a lot, maybe $25 each or something to buy gas. And he said, just hold on a minute. Well, he went back there in the back room, and I guess he had a little printing machine or something, because in a minute he come out, had a new card. And Ed and I was the first two names on the top. And you know, we were the only Republicans that carried that precinct. So that's how much it paid off to go up there and spend 30 minutes and politic with them.
Ed was right.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if just he'd have gone, he'd have been probably the only one that carried.
That's right. That's
carried
right.
it.
That's right. Yeah, I hate to lose Ed. Ed was a good fella, and I knew his first wife, Betty, who really took good care of him, and she had cancer and died. And then he married Penny, and Penny's husband had died, and she was a perfect match for Ed. She was younger than Ed, and she was a nurse. And she, I was invited to his 90th birthday party, which was 2 or 3 days before he died.
Yeah.
And I went, and I hugged Penny, and I told her, I said, Penny, I want to tell you something. Ed's a personal friend. And I said, I've watched him go through some hard times losing a wife. And I said, I appreciate the good care you give old Ed. I know he's older than you are. She said, well, Ed's good to me. And she said, I love him. And she said, why wouldn't I take good care of him? And I said, well, I appreciate that. And, it was in the next day or two.
He looked fine then, didn't he?
Yeah. Oh, he was at the liar's table the day before.
Did he just drop dead with
No, she said that his heart got out of rhythm, which that's not normally something that'll kill you. You can have it shocked back in. And so they loaded him up and took him to maybe Erlanger, one of the Chattanooga hospitals, and was going to shock his heart back in rhythm, and they did, and his heart quit. And they worked on him, and they actually got it started again, but he never, don't think, regained consciousness and just began to shut down. And Mike, his son, who came to the table and paid for the coffee that morning that he died, he said, I said, Mike, can he beat this? And he said, no. He said, it's just a matter of time. And then 2 or 3 hours, we heard Ed had died.
How old was Ed then?
90 years old.
90 years old.
Yeah, that was his 90th
That's right.
birthday party.
It was at the Elks.
It was at the Elks Club.
I saw a video on Facebook, and he was dancing.
Oh yeah, we had a good time. It was a nice party. Had good food and had live entertainment, live music, and it was a class party.
He went. about every weekend out.
That's right.
To the
Jack Hall and Ollie.
Yeah.
And Claude Clymer and his lady friend.
I never knew if Claude. I didn't.
Yeah, Claude went.
Oh yeah. Because I saw Claude at his funeral home.
Right, and there was and before, well, some others were included in that, and they had since passed away. That kind of went out to eat with them on the weekend, and they would go various and sundry places. They didn't just go one place. They might go to the Legion or to the Elks Club or, wherever. But nice little group they had. Really, they seemed to enjoy each other's company. And
Ed was one of those guys you liked Ed because Ed liked you.
That's right.
It was an odd. In other words, there's a lot to learn from that.
And Ed's nickname was Breakstick.
I just knew him as Roadman.
I hung that on him, but before that was on him when he was over in Meigs County. I don't think that's a story we can tell.
That's not, didn't have nothing to do with the running the dozer?
No. It had to do with an old car parked out on the side of the road with his lady friend that had the old-timey brake in the middle. But anyway.
Was he from Meigs County?
Yes.
Originally?
Yes.
I knew you had that cabin at Cottonport, right?
Yeah, right. He played football at Meigs County High School. He was a guard on the football team. Now, I don't remember him playing because I'll be 88 my birthday. And he was, he was 2 or 3 years older, so he was a senior maybe when I was a freshman at Bradley. So I don't remember him playing, but he played at Meigs County, and they said he was a tough little guard.
I believe it. Now, he was, he always had seemed like he always had Randy Fox with him.
Randy and Gary Connors was his 2 underlings, I called them.
Well, there was one other guy, Swifty, Squeaky.
Yeah, well, now Squeaky was a little older than Randy and Gary Connors. Randy was a postman.
He was a postman.
And he had time off, and Ed got a litter grant from the state, money to pick up litter. And so he needed somebody to look after it, but it wasn't a full-time job. So he got Randy to come, and Randy got Gary Connors to help him, and they ran the litter grant program.
I think Randy helped him put signs out on all the county roads, too.
Could have.
They got some kind of a grant to put out signs.
Yeah, well, that could be. Yeah, Randy and Gary Connors were real. Now, Squeaky, he was his...
Squeaky Myers.
Yeah, he was assistant roadman.
Was that Tommy's daddy?
Tommy's uncle.
Uncle.
Right. Now, Tommy's daddy I hired over, when I was city commissioner, I hired Tommy's daddy. I believe his name was Jim. And he worked at the street department.
Now, his Squeaky's son works over there.
Tim. He worked at the fire department. He just retired recently.
Oh, no, I'm talking about, I know who you're talking about, Tim Myers. Boy,
Yeah.
He's already retired?
Yes.
I always liked him.
Yeah.
But Tommy's cousin worked for the road department, too.
Could have, because there's about 14 of those Myers kids.
Yeah.
Squeaky had a bunch of brothers and sisters.
Now, Roger Hanger was almost, how old was Roger? I know Roger real well,
he
but
was not as old as I am, but he was close. He was probably middle 80s, might have been 84, somewhere in there.
He might have even been younger than that.
Could have been.
I think he might have been younger than that.
Could have been. I remember the night it came on the news that his daddy was in a plane crash coming back from Chicago, I think, and it crashed in Kentucky, and he was killed.
Boy, there's got to be a hereafter, doesn't there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, believe that. Man doesn't believe that, he doesn't have a lot to look forward to.
Boy, there's nothing, is there?
Because when it puts you in the ground, if you don't have something else to look forward to, that's a pretty abrupt ending.
There's got to be something else.
Right. Yeah, today in my Sunday school class, they got to talking about Ezekiel. in the Bible. And you know, he was in the Old Testament, so that was a long time ago. Now, 2,000 years ago or thereabout was Christ's time, but this was maybe 1,000 years before that. And they had a wheel in a wheel that landed.
Ezekiel's wheel, they called it.
Yeah, had a wheel that landed.
Yeah. That's where some people get this UFO stuff.
Well, I mean, what's your take on it?
I believe that, I believe the Bible, and it says that, and I believe there's something to it.
Well, I agree with you. I watched a TV program. Of course, you just have to kind of decipher out what you believe and don't believe in some of the programs. And it talked about that wheel landing, and then they led you to believe that it was aliens from another planet, and that maybe even pretty close to the way we are, and could even have intermingled with Earth people.
Well, it says the Nephilims came down and mated with the sons of man or daughters of man. I mean, it says it.
I agree. So I don't really know about that, and I don't dwell, of course, on that, but it's very interesting to me. I like to.
It's a good mystery.
It is.
To think about.
It is. I mean, you know, you go back about that time was when Egypt was doing all the stuff, building the pyramids and all that. I mean, you know, with no modern equipment, no engineering education and all that.
And well, here's the other thing: the geometry of getting that that sun that comes right through the call it, the solstice.
Yes.
The summer solstice.
Right.
It's coming right through that peak.
At the right time.
And how they could, I mean, we even naming the stars and the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper and all of that, the Orion's belt. I wouldn't, if I didn't have any knowledge of that, I couldn't figure that out today. I wouldn't even notice, would you?
No. But you know, I've been to Egypt, and best trip I ever made in my lifetime. It's an amazing place. It's not a very big place as far as, it's pretty big, but it's barren. Once you get half a mile away from that Nile River, it's just a desert, nothing.
Yeah, how'd they get that stuff over there?
Well, supposedly they floated it on barges down that Nile River. I went to a quarry where they supposedly got a lot of that stone. And obelisk, you know what an obelisk is?
Obelisk,
okay. Yeah. There was one laying there that they'd been working on maybe 3,000 years ago, and it had cracked. And so they just quit, left it laying there. And it's something to see and how they did it. And then we went over to the Valley of the Kings, where they had buried all those pharaohs.
All the tombs.
And man, they let you go down in some of them. And there would be rooms in there twice as big as this room, hand-hewed out of solid rock. And you could see in the wall where they'd hand-chiseled it out.
And just think about the air being very little air breathing in there.
Yeah, and what they did, that was one of the questions I asked the guide. He said they situated the openings in such a way that a vacuum almost was created and drew air in.
See, that's just beyond.
That's right. I mean, how would they know that and without some help from somewhere? But it's
a mystery.
It is. We flew into Cairo and got on a cruise ship on the Nile River, and we traveled at night and stopped in the daytime at all the different places, and it's full of really interesting sights.
Now, if you're there at the pyramids, Is I've seen pictures of there's literally a town right just outside of it.
Cairo.
So it's a kind of a bustling town.
Well, it probably, when they were built, it probably was out in the nowhere. And since they built them, Cairo has built up, and maybe some other little towns around it. Now, right where it is, they won't allow anything to be built. So there's probably 200 or 300 acres around it, and you can. They're like anybody else. They took advantage of the tourist people. They rented a ride on a camel. Milteen rode a camel around the pyramid, and they did. I'll tell you something funny had happened. But I won't to say the name, but we had a local doctor and his wife on the trip, and she was a very attractive blonde-headed lady, and she rode the camel, and each camel that you rode had an Arab guy that led the camel, make sure it didn't buck you off or whatever. Well, after they went around, they stopped Milteen, they helped her off and some others off. This old boy didn't bring the blonde back. He was headed home with her. And then we had to get the guide got the police, and they went and got her. And
Did she have any objections?
Yeah. Yeah, they fired this old boy, and the police arrested him. And, he decided he's going to have him a blonde lady. He's going to take her home with him.
He didn't know she was married to a doctor.
Oh, he didn't know, didn't care, I don't guess. But it was a great trip, and if you ever want to go somewhere different, that's a good one to go on.
Have you ever seen any phenomena in the sky or anything? Any ghost, anything that you really just couldn't explain?
No, I don't think so.
I think I saw a UFO one time. I was headed down Mouse Creek Road, and I saw this big thing floating in the sky. And I thought, well, that must be some kind of something. When I get over to my mom's, they'll be talking about it on the news. And I got busy, and I forgot all about it, and nobody's ever mentioned it. And I always wondered what that was, because you'd think that everybody else would say something.
Yeah, I don't know of anything that I've ever thought was not.
How about ghosts?
No, and I hear people, and I'm certainly not a religious fanatic, but I've heard people in church say that the Lord spoke to them. Well, I'm sure that's possible, but he never has spoke to me in a voice that I could. Now, I will say this. I've had things pop in my mind that I'd never thought of before, and, that maybe I ought to do or something. And unless that's kind of what it is, it's sort of like I was raised at North Cleveland Church of God, Pentecostal. And I heard people speak in tongues. And you could tell if somebody was faking, and you could tell when it's real. The times that I heard it that I figured it was for sure real, it'd get deathly quiet, and somebody'd speak in tongues. And sometimes it was short, sometimes it wasn't too short. And when they quit, it remained. You could hear a pin drop, and somebody would decipher what they said.
Not two people, just one person?
It'd be somebody different. It wouldn't be the one that normally, and I don't, maybe that sometime, but sometimes it would be the preacher, sometimes it would be somebody else.
You wonder why the Bible's not real specific on a lot of things.
Well, and what I was getting around to, other churches, you don't hear about that. But after I married my wife, we began to go to Wesley Methodist Church. And there's a lady there that speaks in tongues. And she's if I called her name, you know her well. And she's a straight up lady. It's not, there's no put on or any of that. So I was taught that no matter what somebody's religion was, that you didn't need to make fun or, and especially you didn't blaspheme the Holy Spirit, that might be the only unpardonable sin. And so therefore, when somebody tells me something about that, I don't make any wisecracks or I don't make
either.
fun of it or none of that sort of thing, because who knows?
I'm too scared to.
That's right. I am too. Now, changing the subject, let me change gears here a minute. Let me tell you a feel-good story.
Okay.
As you know, when I left the courthouse as county mayor, the only thing I got to take with me was the authority to marry people. So, and I have married a lot of couples. Donna Simpson hired me. She was doing it, and it was taking a lot of her time. And a lot of times people wouldn't show up. They'd call, wouldn't show. She'd be there waiting on them. And by law, she couldn't charge to do it. Now, if they gave her some gratuity, $20 or whatever, she could take that, but she couldn't tell them she had a $50 fee or what. Well, when she called me, she said, you can set you a fee. You would be you have no connection to Bradley County. You're a private contractor, I guess would be the word. So if you want to marry them, you can marry them and you can tell them what your fee is. If you don't want to marry them, you can say you don't, because you're a private contractor. You're not taking any county money, state money, federal money. So I started doing it. But anyway, to get back what I was going to tell you, I'm sitting there at home and phone rang and this gentleman said, told me his name, and he said, I want to get married, and said, I'm down at the courthouse now, and the girl here gave me your phone number. Could you run down here and marry us? And she said your fee was $50, which that's what I charge them. And I said, yes, I'm not doing anything. I'll be happy to run down. I said, I got my blue jeans on because I've been working in my tomato patch. And he said, that's okay, I've got on shorts. So I get in the car and go down to the gazebo out front of the courthouse. Well, when I get out of the car, they're standing there at the steps to the gazebo. And he's about 75 years old. And his wife's there with him, wife-to-be is there with him, and she's at least that old and in a wheelchair. And the gentleman is holding a little about 3-year-old boy by the hand. Well, that's kind of an unusual conglomeration of people, So I go up, and I don't ask questions. That's not my place to say, why are you doing this or whatever. But he volunteered. He said, I'm sure in your mind you're wondering why our age folks are getting married. He said, we've been living together 50 years, never married. And said, we never intended to marry. But said, this little boy here, we're adopting him. And said, our attorney told us that we'd have much better chance of adopting this little boy if we were married, had a marriage certificate. So I still didn't say much. And he said, this is my grandson. Said, my daughter had this little boy out of wedlock and didn't want him. And said, he's like my blood grandson, and we're raising him and have ever since he's born. I said, sir, you've got right next to me. I said, I got 2 children, both of them adopted. I said, we got our son when he was 4 days old. We got our daughter when she was 3 months old. And I said, I understand where you're coming from. I said, I'll not only marry you, but yours is free. It doesn't cost you anything. Well, he cried, and I did too. So it's, now I run across some others that are dandies, and that's a whole lot about what my book is about, is various and sundry things that have happened to me over the years in marrying people.
That's not just marriage though, right?
No, there's some other stuff in there. There's some who I am, where I came from, what my family is, what my family background is, and then there's some other stories in there. But there's 2 or 3 chapters in there that are kind of funny. I said God's got to have a humorous spot somewhere because He allows funny things to happen.
What inspired you to write this?
My daughter Jill. As a matter of fact, there's a note right there that she wrote in it.
That's the perfect color of book.
Well, she came in one day and she said, "Dad, would you write a book if I'd pay for it?" And I said, "Jill, I'm not an author." She said, "No, you're a storyteller." Mm-hmm. And said, "You tell a good story," and said, "I would sure like to give you that for Christmas." And she did, and so I worked a year getting everything kind of lined up, and she would come in once a week and help me make sure the English was right, the punctuation was right.
So you wrote it, she just kind of edited it?
She edited it, and then she got on the computer and sent it to the company.
Was it, which company did the...
I think it's on here. Storyworks, the name of the company.
They picked the colors?
Yeah.
It looks like a nice book.
It is. They gave me, in the price of it, they gave me 3 copies, and I could order, but I didn't write it to sell.
So you just got 3 copies?
I just got 3 copies.
We need to get more than 3 copies.
Well, I don't know why. Who would not want to read that? I mean, outside your family, and I'll own it. See, I got Tim one, and his family has passed it around.
I don't know. I think a good 300 or 400 people, surely.
I'm not into that.
What about the public library? Can you take one there?
Probably could.
Put one of those things in the back. I don't even know if they have that anymore, do you?
I don't know either. I don't know either. Going back to my stories on the marriage thing, I got elected county mayor in '82. It was called county executive then. And so I hired my backup team. Robin Hicks, Scott Hicks's wife, was my front desk receptionist. Here again, another good looking. That's one. Right. I mean, she came as cheap as the ugly one would have. Yeah. And so anyway, maybe the second day I'm in office, I'm back there in my office and I don't really know what I'm doing because I just got there. And I hear this commotion. And I could hear Robin saying, "Well, Mr. Cartwright's busy." And so I didn't get up, and through the door came this lady, and she said, "Do you marry people?" And I said, "Well, ma'am, I understand that I have the authority to, but I never have." She said, "How much you charge?" Well, then I was like Donna.
Yeah,
I couldn't have a fee. I said, "I don't have a fee." And when I didn't even say, "Whatever you give me, whatever you want," I didn't even get time. She said, "Line up." And when she said that, through the door came this young lady and this guy, and this, you've heard of shotgun weddings.
Yeah.
Well, we were having a shotgun wedding without the shotgun. She was probably 7 months pregnant, and this old boy was shuffling along behind her. And so I said, "Okay, I have to sign the paperwork." So I signed the paperwork, got all that taken care of, and so then I walked across the hall to Billy Lawson, my bookkeeper, and I said, "Billy, is there a little ceremony?" She said, "Yeah, I think we've got a book here that's got ceremony in it." So she gets this book out and brings it over here to me, and I do the little ceremony. And when it got through, I thought, well, I've been to weddings where the preacher would say, "You can now kiss your bride." Yeah. So I thought, well.
Yeah, say that.
Yeah, I said, "You can kiss your bride." The old boy said, "I don't want to kiss her." And when he said that, Mama said, "No, you already kissed her." And when Mama said that, old boy was gone. He was out that door and gone. So I don't know how long that one lasted, but
They're probably still married.
maybe may have a house full of kids. Oh, I married one day. Had a lady call and said, "I want to get married on my lunch hour." Well, I'd been going to lunch with Harlan Painter and Ben Moore and Kenneth Tinsley. 4 of us went to lunch for about 20 years. So I said, "Okay, I'll wait on you at lunch." So lunchtime, here comes 2 ladies and a guy. And back then you had to have witness. And I figured, well, there's the bride, a witness, and the groom. So they come back here in the back office, and I'm fill out the paperwork, and I didn't know which one was the bride. And I said, "Which one of y'all?" Said, "Well," said, "we want you to marry him to both of us." He took me by surprise, and I said, "Well," I said, I can't do that."
Don't have a form for that.
No, I said, "I've got to marry you to the name that's on the license." And she said, "Well, we've been sharing him," and said, "We're going to keep on sharing." I said, "That's more information than I need." I said, "I'll have to marry him to you, this one that's on the..." So I get started on the little ceremony, and I asked him if he took the lady to be his bride and all. Well, he didn't say nothing. He just standing there grinning. He weighed about 115. They weighed at least 250 each. And so I said, "Well, you don't have to answer me." But I said, "It normally..." And she looked at him and she said, "I do." And he grinned real big and he said, "I do." He was a Hispanic guy, didn't speak any English. He was in here probably illegally. He was marrying an American citizen, and he was getting legal.
2 of them.
Yeah, marrying, well, he's living with 2 of them anyway. He worked for Ms. Neal down at the horse farm and lived in the 3 of them. And the only reason I say that they lived in the little tenant house, I lived down there at the time.
Close to the tennis courts?
Yes. And so as I'd come to work, I'd see them out in the yard, so they were making it okay. But that's the most unusual one that I ever had, was wanting to marry the groom to 2 ladies.
But I don't understand why you get it printed and have 3. Nobody can read it.
This?
Yeah, just you and 2 other people.
Well, I'd loan it to you to read because I know where I could go get my book if you didn't.
Well, you
bring
need to
it
have
home.
you need to have 50 printed.
Well, that's a thought, but I'm not into being an author.
Well, it's just funny stories.
On the courthouse square at 30 2nd Street is the law firm of Logan Thompson Law. Since 1965, they have served the legal needs for the good citizens of Cleveland-Bradley County. If you've got a problem, they're no problem. Give them a call.
I think Jill did the right thing.
Well, she's, I kid her about, I live in a condo on Ocoee Street, right across from First Methodist. And so she and her husband, Bernie McGuire, they bought one of them. And so they're in the same building I'm in. And I tell people, I said, that's called moving the nursing home closer. Because, at my age, one of these days I may need some help.
Did Teresa sell her place across the street?
She has a contract, I understand.
She's in Italy.
That's right.
She'll be back, maybe this week, I think?
I think
maybe
so.
Maybe today.
She, I enjoyed her being my neighbor. She lived right directly across the street from me. And I told her, I said, I don't mean this in a negative kind of way, but you'll add a little spice to this place of old people. And she laughed. And she did, man. She'd come over at that pool and she'd flirt with everybody. It didn't matter if they're 10 years old or 90 years old. You know, she was.
She's really a good person.
Oh yeah, she is.
A great person.
Yeah, and she got along with everybody, and what I kidded her about the reason she sold it. We have a homeowners association, and you got to go with the rules.
Yeah,
She broke them all.
She don't go back.
broke them all. She wasn't supposed to change the awning. Supposed to put
Well,
one back.
if you don't want her to do something, don't tell her not to do it.
That's right. That's right. But she renovated that thing, and buddy, it's sharp. And she sold it. I think she sold it to another real estate person.
And she renovated a place over there on Worth Street.
Made it look good.
Made it look good.
Yeah, she did.
Do you think? I was going to ask you. I thought Jill was out of town. Is she in town?
Yeah. Now my son Tim is.
Maybe that's what it was.
Tim got transferred to Millinocket, Maine, with Bowater back in the day. They bought Great Northern Paper out up there. Bowater did, and he got transferred up there. He was superintendent of when they were recycling all that paper. You know, it's a big deal there for a while. Well, he went up there as that. And then when that kind of went out of style and they quit recycling, he got an offer to go to Memphis. And he wanted to come back south. He didn't like living up there. The winters were horrendous. And so he moved back to Memphis, and he's lived over there now 20 years maybe or longer.
But think about this, Eddie. You're what, 80?
Be 88 my birthday.
So you were born what?
36.
1936. You were born 1 year after this house was built. And you've seen things come and go.
Oh yeah, a lot of them.
Do you think that as you get older, after you've seen things come and go, can you start seeing a trend to where how they're going to go now? Or do you see them to where it all goes back to the way it was? Or can you see a trajectory?
Well, it's amazing how smart my dad's got as I've got older. He told me one time, he said, now, I won't see this, but you might. He said, there'll come a day when you'll leave Cleveland, of course there wasn't any interstate, and you'll go down 2 Mile Hill out there by the racetrack, and there'll be people in business all the way to Chattanooga. There won't be any open land between there and Chattanooga. Well, you know, it's going in that direction.
All that's left's bend about.
Yeah, and
basically.
So I think that we're in ideal location. You can go from Tennessee in a day's time about anywhere. South Florida, Atlantic Ocean.
You're 9 hours from about anything you want.
That's right. So we're right in the middle, and then there are still a lot of what I call conservative folks, and we're in a conservative area. And Joe Lee, who's a real estate man, tells me that a lot of people moving in here, especially from the West, California, Arizona, and they're coming this way, that what few conservatives there is in that area are moving this way because of our lifestyle.
And I'm seeing more and more liberal type people around, even in our groups, that are starting to talk a little more liberal, as if they always sort of thought that way. So what I'm saying is our whole area is getting a little more liberal than it used to be.
I agree, but it's still so much more conservative than the other areas.
But now, for instance, when you were like 6 years old, you could remember, about 6 years old, you start remembering things back then. You didn't have air conditioning in the house, right?
No.
Had to open the window or go out on the porch to cool off at night so you could go back to sleep.
Right.
and vehicles there weren't 3 to a house. I got 5 cars at my house for 4 people. And back then, you're probably, 1 car to...
Yeah, we didn't even, I remember we had a 39 Chevrolet when the war broke out. World War II broke out.
The real war, as some call it.
Yeah, we had a 39 Chevrolet. Well, they quit making cars. And man, the price just went through the ceiling. And my dad said, hey, if I'm ever going to sell that old Chevrolet, now it's time to sell it.
So your only means of transportation?
He sold. And he and my uncle had a service station down at 3 Point. He rode a bicycle from...
Which wasn't far.
No, about 6 blocks. Mm-hmm. He rode a bicycle back and forth to work. And he worked down there for a while, and then he went to Brown Stowe work, made parts for Army tanks.
Why'd they call that 3 Points?
Because there's 3 points there.
Well, but then you got 5 points.
There's 5 points there.
Is that the only ones?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know of a 4-pointer or a 6-pointer.
No, I don't either. But that's the reason. And not only that, but the 3 points. You remember Jeff Morlock?
Yeah, but it was.
Well, his folks lived there, and that's called Morlock Crossing the railroad. That's the Morlock Crossing.
I'd never heard that in my life.
Well, that's...
Is that where Ware's TV was?
Yeah, at one time.
Yeah.
But it started out further up the street, started out the corner of Parker and Central.
Mm.
And it was not Ware's TV, it was Ware's radio. There wasn't no TVs.
That's right.
So,
see, I'm so out of touch, I wasn't even...
Yeah, well, see, I remember when the big deal was records. They had a big record business.
Ware's radio?
Yeah. Man, they sold record players and radios and records. And I remember Elvis Presley come on the scene. I believe I was a freshman in high school. Man, you could go down there and they'd sell out Elvis Presley records.
Was that close to Dooley's ice cream?
No. Dooley's was you went across Morlock Crossing up there almost to the big curve around the Vest grocery store.
Wasn't that Randy Fox's uncle or something?
No, I don't know that. Jeff Lovinggood at First Baptist Church.
Yeah, I know Jeff, yeah.
Okay.
Go God.
That's right. That was his great uncle, Bill Dooley was. His mama was Jean Ann Lovinggood, but she was Jean Ann Mavity was her maiden name, and she married Mavity.
I knew Jean, or know her still. Is she still alive?
No, she's not. She worked for me at the courthouse.
Yeah, I know Jeff. Boy, there's not a finer person, is there?
He's a good one. Jeff and his brother. He's got a brother.
Yeah, John.
John, yeah.
But Eddie, back to that, things have changed.
Well, they have changed, and I think the reason they've changed is growth. I mean, it's not going to change unless something is either going down or up, one or the other. And we're going up.
So you think things stay the same as long as there's...
As long as the economy, now we could have a blip every now and then.
That's not really going to affect stuff long.
Not big. No. But at the liar's table, one of the big topics of conversation lately has been traffic problems in Cleveland. We're getting to where we got a lot of cars. And I noticed that there's a little printout come out just recently about how many new jobs have been created in the last maybe 12 months and how many are projected in the next 12 months. About 2,500 new jobs. Well, 2,500 new jobs just goes back to the point you made about how many cars you got at your house. 2,500 jobs will mean 2 cars for probably each family. So you're talking about a bunch more cars. Now, something has to give on infrastructure.
Well, I don't know what it can be because they want the developer to bring it to the spot, and they want to regulate the developer.
That's not the infrastructure I'm talking about.
You talking about roads?
I'm talking about another loop around Cleveland. You're talking about
You talking
big
about
bucks.
like Hooper Gap to.
Yeah, who knows? You can get a map of Bradley County, topographical map, that's got the lines on it, and you can pretty well see the only places it can go, and that's where you'll have to go. And yeah, the Hooper Gap's probably about where it ought to be.
Or Lauderdale.
Yeah.
I've wondered about that, the end of
Yeah,
Lauderdale.
yeah.
Because that really doesn't make sense for that Lauderdale to just dead end into North Lee Highway.
No, it doesn't. And of course, to go on, you're going to have to do something about the railroad. You can't just have two arms come down. You're going to have an overpass, I would assume, to get across the railroad with a 4-lane road.
Boy, that's all over my head, isn't it yours?
Well, yeah, it is, but it's something that is happening all over the United States.
Well, let's think about this. This is thinking far out. But in 1930s, 1940, 1939, Ware's radio was selling a lot of records.
Yeah.
All right, here we are 80 years later. Which
No
would-
records left.
no records, no 45s, no 76s, no 33s.
And almost no household radios.
Yeah, just almost none.
Right.
No 8-track tape players. They wouldn't know what that
Nope.
is. No CDs. And now, I ordered online this complete series of something. I forget. I'll watch these old shows. So I watched the whole. I'll be honest. It was my 3 sons, because I like the old architecture and just the clothes and everything. But before I hit send, I noticed it wasn't CDs. It was thumb drives. Well, I don't even have a place to put a thumb drive in my
I don't
TV.
even know what it is.
I don't even know what it. I think it's like a, you can get at Staples a thumb drive. So my point is, what's to make us think that in 80 years transportation won't be completely different anyway?
Well, it may be.
I mean, there may be just, if they have, and I don't know what it would be, but who would have thought in 1939 the guy selling radios at Ware's Radio, who would have thought that 80 years later we don't even have any? That's like saying 80 years from now we don't even have cars.
Well, we may not. We may be doing something else. Talking about cassettes and all that, I'm driving, and I'm driving it today, coming out here to your place, an antique Cadillac. It was Judge Mashburn. He bought it new for his wife, and when she passed away, I bought it from the estate. And it's got a cassette player in it, it's got a disc player in it, and it's got an AM, FM radio in it. Now, you can't buy a car that's got that in it anymore.
You can't do it.
No, so
And-
it's changed that much, and that car is 24 years old.
And Ware's Radio would have had no idea that any of those would even existed.
That's right.
And I went to school with his son, so it's not been that far removed.
You're right.
So
You're
I
right.
don't know what we say. Well, it's almost like whatever your wildest imagination is, may be what happened. Because how could you have described that to the radio guy? Oh, before long they'll just be even sending stuff wireless. They don't even have to have a wire now.
That's true.
Speaking of wires and Cleveland Utilities, isn't it funny that one of the people that worked at the chalet as a bag boy was Tim Henderson? Now he's literally running Cleveland Utilities, which is across the
And I
street.
might add, I'm on the board of directors there. He does a wonderful job. Tim's smart enough to know that he's not an electrical engineer, but he's got them all around him. He lets them do their job. He's not a financial wizard, but he's got one there beside him. You know, he's smart enough to know that he can make the decisions, but he's got somebody that can implement what needs to happen.
He's a
People person.
people person, and calm, and probably a real good thinker. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Some people are smart and bad thinkers.
True.
Some people are
True.
good thinkers and not
Well, you
that
know,
smart.
he masterminded the, for lack of more knowledge, I'm going to call it the Cleveland Utility Authority. And what that is, up until recently, everything had to go through the city council that Cleveland Utility did. And that's not bad, but it's also complicated.
Complicated, I would say.
You've got all the bonds to sell. You've got all the paperwork and all that kind of thing. Now, the state back some years ago came up with an authority where the utilities could opt to take this authority as long as the city council agreed, and all the bond indebtedness that Cleveland Utility owes, and Cleveland Utility owes quite a bit because you're buying $150,000 trucks, and you're borrowing a lot of money. You're paying it back, but you're borrowing a lot. Well, now Cleveland Utilities does not have to go through the council for any of that. We have assumed our own debt. It put the city in much better shape bond rating wise, and Tim masterminded all this. He and a couple of the guys that worked directly under him, a finance guy and a I don't know what the technical term is, but social media kind of person. I don't remember what they call it. But anyway, the three of them, and I went with them to the city council meeting when we had to have that vote. And it carried 5-2. And we had to have 4, so we got 5 votes. So we got enough votes. And then there's a little give and take in it. We had to agree with the council to add 2 more members to the board to come from the council. But the state law in this authority says that the general public has to have the majority, not the politicians. So out of the 7, that 4 has to be from the general public and 3 from the council. So now we had 1 from the council, and that was David May. Now we've added Mayor Brooks and Dale Hughes. So we have those 3. And then from the public have Joe Cate. We have Aubrey Ector. He's an engineer up at Olin. And we have Debbie Ledford from Car Place and myself. That's the 4 from the general public. So we had our first meeting last month. It was an organizational meeting, and we elected Aubrey as chairman and Joe Cate as vice chairman. So we're good to go now, and we're going to have broadband, and we're going to have one heck of a product.
So this broadband, if I'm out on Lead Mine Valley Road or way out Bacon Road or something, I can have. Where can I have it?
You got to be a customer of Cleveland Utility.
So it is, yeah.
That
makes sense.
We're copying Chattanooga Power Board. They're supposedly the best in the nation. They have the fastest Wi-Fi. If you're making your living with a computer, and you got to have good Wi-Fi to, sometimes you have just on your TV at home, you'll have it freeze from.
Yeah, or all those speckled things.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Well, see, supposedly that won't happen with what we're doing.
So I may not have to deal with Spectrum or Charter or AT&T.
Not for your Wi-Fi, you don't. Now
all that confuses me, doesn't it? You?
Yeah, it does. It's really over my head.
I'm probably paying for it 3 different ways and don't know it.
I doubt that. I know you well enough to know that you've looked into that part of it. But I think that really the Chattanooga Power Board, they've been in it a long time, and they've done it right, and we have copied them, I mean, right down the line. Now, we just bought that property at the last board meeting from Joe Moore, right across the street from Cleveland Utilities. There's a vacant lot.
That's a nice lot.
Yeah, there's really 2 lots there, and we bought those, and that's for future development. And, you know, we're going to have to house a bunch of equipment and stuff somewhere. We don't know for sure. We're not that far along. We're spending, now get this, we're spending $72 million. That's not to be sneezed at. That's a pretty good chunk of change. So,
what's the advantage to having that over some of this other stuff?
well, there's a lot of people make their living with a computer.
And need high speed?
Oh, yeah. They don't need to be blanking out and having to go back here and start over doing this. And we'll have a product. It will be competitively priced. Now, here's what normally happens. We hired a consultant to come in, do a study, and tell us whether it would work or not here. And they tell us that we're a prime spot for it. That we will have a product, if we go ahead and copy Chattanooga Power Board, which we are, it'll be very competitive price-wise. But the big boys in the industry, like Spectrum, they'll cut their price. That's the first thing they'll do. They'll cut their price trying to hang on to their customers. Well, they'll keep a lot of people by doing that, but the people that really have to have it to make a living, you know, there's not enough difference in the price to quibble, and they got the best product you can get. It's kind of like if you want to drive a Cadillac or you want to drive a Chevrolet. I mean, you know.
Well, and you would assume if you got a problem, you can go talk to somebody, whereas now I don't even know how to get into the Spectrum office, and you call that number and all that complicated stuff.
That's a good point. The guy told us that most of the time when you have, well, Chattanooga Power Board, he said in 1 hour, they'll have a truck rolling your way. Where now you may set up a week from now between 5 and 8 o'clock, and they may get there and they may not.
I waited on them last week, and I had somebody over there waiting for them, and come to find out they decided they weren't coming. They didn't have the wires there or something.
Yeah.
Something that there's no way I could have known that.
No. Well, that's what we think we'll not have. We'll have good service, good public relations, a competitive price, and a great product.
Was there any mention of this Elon Musk Starlink in that? I know he's got something like that I see up on.
No, not that I know of.
And maybe it surely wouldn't be as high speed as a direct wire. I got enough sense to know that, I guess.
I don't know. I don't have enough sense to know yes or no on it, because I'm honest with it, it's over my head.
Well, do you think Cleveland Utilities has got to just get bigger and bigger and bigger? You know, I had Tom Wheeler on, and he talked about...
Good guy, by the way.
We talked about the origins of it, and when there was no lights, nothing. And boy, it's come a long way since then. I mean...
It really started, the first general manager was a guy named Wally Jacobs.
Wally Jacobs, I think he mentioned him.
Well, Wally had been with Tennessee Power Company, and that was a forerunner to TVA.
That's right.
And so when TVA came on the scene, they put Tennessee Power Company out of business. But I mean, they were cheaper and people got lights, and, you know, they were tickled to death.
Maybe they bought him out.
Well, they did.
I think, yeah, they did. Kind of
And Wally Jacobs, I don't know if you've ever heard about the cabin up Parksville called Polly Wally. Well, anyway, that was Mr. Jacobs and his wife. Her
Oh,
name
Polly Wally's a road. That's the where you can let your boat out, isn't it?
Yes. Well, that was his place.
Close to Sugarloaf.
Yeah, that was his place. And he didn't live there, but that was his cabin. And so he came to Cleveland, and he was the first CEO that we had. Okay, he came along, and he stayed, and Joe Beavers followed him. All right, now, I don't know whether it was at the end of Mr. Jacobs' time or the beginning of Mr. Beavers. They had a strike, pretty tough strike. And Chattanooga Power Board was having one at the same time, and I think it spilled over to Cleveland. And to settle that strike, the city commission agreed that they would tie the salaries. That's what the strike was over. That's normally what it's over, is pay. That they would tie those salaries to Chattanooga Power Board. That's the reason Cleveland Utilities has always, in my lifetime, paid better than the street department or fire department or
just a little bit
that's
better.
Right. And they always had good benefits, and that's the way all that started. I have observed, and I've been on that board as 15 years maybe, I don't know exactly. If everything in local government ran as well as Cleveland Utilities, we wouldn't have many problems. It runs the smoothest. They have good help. They do their homework when they hire people. They don't just try to get somebody off the street. They do the background checks properly, and they have good employees, and they pay, like I say, a little better, and they're on a good retirement. And
You're talking about everybody from Tom Wheeler to Ken Webb to irregardless.
Yeah, see, from Joe Beavers' stay, he hired Tom
Wheeler.
Yeah. He hired Tom as his electrical engineer.
Yeah.
And Tom Wheeler's daddy was the CEO on Sand Mountain.
That's right.
In a little electrical deal. And so Tom then succeeded Joe Beavers when he retired. Okay, then I came on during Tom Wheeler's time. And so I got to see Tom operate, and he was good. He was really good. And when he decided to retire, I really thought that Pat Inslee, do you know Pat?
I knew Pat, yeah, I like Pat.
Okay, I really thought Pat would take his place. Pat was second in command, so to speak. And I mentioned to him one day, I said, what are you going to do when Tom, he said, when he goes out the door, I'm going with him. I said, are you kidding me? He said, no. When he retires, I'm retiring. And he did. So it left an opening. And so I went to Tom. I said, Tom, you know the employees over there. Who could do this? He said, Ken Webb can do it. So he got the job. He stayed, and one afternoon he called. He said, you at home? And I said, yes. He said, I need to come by and talk with you. So he came, and he came in, and he sat down, and he said, I'm leaving Cleveland Utilities. Well, he'd only been there, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I thought he was sick. I thought he was going to tell me I've got cancer, I can't do the job or what. He said, I'm going to retire. He said, I want to do some other things.
And he was at the age, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was old enough.
Yeah.
He was 65 maybe. And so then we had 3 or 4. Tom Wheeler actually endorsed Ken Webb.
Mm-hmm. I think I remember that.
Okay, well, Ken Webb, he said, I can't tell you any one person. He said, there's 3 or 4 that can do it. And so he said, I'm not going to get involved in names. And he didn't. And Tim Henderson was one of them that applied. And when we interviewed each one of them individually, and Tim hit a home run with his interview. And then so we hired him, and he's been there since.
How long has that been? 5 years, 4?
Well, Ken's been a city councilman coming up on 4 years. Yeah, it's been 5 years.
Seems like it was Do you think eventually everybody will just work for the government? Because it's
I
rough.
hope not.
There's a big difference between laying brick and working for Cleveland Utilities. You know, it's a different, you know, it's different.
You've got your foot in it now. See how you get it out.
But I mean, it is different, isn't it?
It is different.
So I don't know.
Somebody will say, yeah, said there's a city bunch, said 5 watching and 1 working.
Well, I know how that, I can understand that because you got to have some people, you have to have some of that. I understand that. I just know the bigger you get, the more people we have to have. You know, even the cities, you know, even the county's got to have more people. I don't know, maybe I don't know what's best.
Well, I don't know what that answer is, but this broadband that's coming, it's an exciting time to me. I love being involved in that kind of stuff, and
yeah, it's been coming for a while.
It has.
So I don't know. It's interesting to see how things evolve. You were around when there wasn't even I-75 didn't go past Georgetown Road, right?
Oh yeah, I remember when they started building it and it stopped at the chalet up there.
Yeah.
And we had people that stayed with us at the chalet that landed a Piper Cub airplane up there on the graded out part of the road that wasn't finished, and walked down there and spent the night at the chalet.
How did people run 75 miles an hour and just the road stop?
Well, I guess they had it signed, had good signs.
Road
up,
ends?
Yeah, because it stopped there at the chalet, and you wouldn't believe the kind of business it gave us. Boy, it emptied them all off there.
I bet.
Yeah, it was, you know, we used to fill up.
About when did they extend it?
Well, the chalet was built in '68. I went there in '69. And I was elected to city commission in '72, between '69 and '72, but I can't say exactly.
So is when they extended it.
That's when it.
And it had to have taken a long time to extend it all the way to.
Oh yeah, they were grading on it. I remember when you got, because I rode up the road bed because we were renting signs, and we were looking at sign sites up through there, and it was just red dirt. And then they graveled some of it, and it was gravel. I mean, it wasn't open to the public, but they were working on it, you know.
And I guess it went all the way to wherever it ends.
It went up to the bridge at Loudon.
Is that where it's?
That's where it stopped again.
Okay.
And then it was coming the other way.
Oh, I see.
And it met up there at the river.
Boy, if it wasn't for the railroad and for I-75, Cleveland would be a whole lot different place.
Oh, yeah. Well, look at Meigs County. There's not an inch of railroad in the county.
Or an interstate.
No interstate, no railroad. But, boy, they got the water. They got the Tennessee and the Hiawassee River.
Yeah, that just never did them that much good for a big... Wasn't you on the board at 58 Boat Dock?
Yes.
What was the name of that?
Tri-County Sportsman League. Colonel Corn put me on that board. He was one of the founders of it. Him and Jimmy Logan Sr. They fished and
Was it already a boat dock before they got involved?
Yeah. It was a TVA boat dock.
Oh. Would they buy it?
No, they leased it from TVA.
It's still leased, reckon, I guess?
Probably.
Probably still on a lease.
Oh, is it?
I went up there and ate here 2 weeks ago.
I'm not eating it. You know, it was open for years as a little restaurant. And a guy got put out of business for bootlegging out of there. And I owned a cabin over at Lake Haven, and we went over there quite a bit. It was a good place to go, and if you like to water ski and boat ride and fish, swim, it was a great
Well,
place.
I ate at the restaurant about 2 weeks ago. It's nice. It's just like you're eating it, you know, hamburger and French fries. And,
I figured it would have short order kind of business.
Yeah. But it was real clean.
Well, see, it got run down, and it was there for a while. It's just full of junk piled in there. And then like you say, I don't think there is any more Tri-County Sportsman's League. I remember it cost $5 a year to belong. And we had a fish fry once a year. Everybody would bring their fish in and clean them, and they had an old freezer in one of those little old shacks over there. And you put your fish in that freezer, and then once a year, I don't remember the guy's name now that sanded floors for builders.
Wasn't York Miller?
No, it was before that.
Wasn't Kirby? No.
I'd know the last name if I heard it. Anyway, he had a big fish fryer, and he'd on wheels, and he'd roll it behind hook it to the back of his truck, and come over and fry fish for
Did
him.
he just sand floors or lay linoleum too?
It's sanded floors that I know of. And he ran the Cherokee Beagle Club out off 64, lived out in that area.
I believe that was York Miller.
No, I know both of them well. It's before them. But I know his name. If he had a brother that worked with him, and he had a nephew that worked at Cleveland Utilities, and
Isn't it funny we know people and we can't think of who they're.
you wait till you get older. Miltine, my wife and I, we've got we'll be talking just like you and I, and we'll I can't think of his name. Well, we'll go on to some other subject, and 3 o'clock in the morning I'll wake up, and it just popped in my another morning. I felt her shake me. She told me the name of whatever it was we were talking about.
You know something, it's not, I don't know if it's age or not, but the other day I just could not find my stapler. And a little while later it was in the refrigerator.
Refrigerator? How much of that wine did you have, Dee?
I mean, when did I put the stapler in the refrigerator?
Well, that happens to us as we get older. I know, as you know, I go on fishing trips, and now it's, used to play golf. Well, after I retired,
Yeah.
I played golf.
4 days a week.
Yes, 10 o'clock, 4 days a week. We had senior chews up.
With Ralph and.
Yeah, that whole bunch.
Yeah.
We had a great time.
Yeah.
And then my back got out of whack. And the doctor told me, he said, you're paying for your back now. You played all that golf. I never could hit the ball as far as the rest of the guys. So to try to stay competitive, I'd try to reach back and get a little extra, hit it a little. And he said, well, all that straining and all has got your back out of whack, and the only way it can ever be okay is have it operated on.
How many years did you play 4 days a week?
20 years.
See, that would drive me up the wall.
Well, if you loved it, it wouldn't.
What would you be 3 hours a day or something?
Yeah. We'd go off at 10 o'clock. By 1 o'clock, I was home to eat lunch. I was retired.
Yeah, and 20 years goes by quick, so it's not like.
It does. Well, I was building houses. And seeing I had carpenters that I trusted, and they knew what they were doing. They had plans to go by. Now, I'd go by and see it, everything.
In the mornings and after.
Yeah.
After the golf.
Make sure that everything they needed they had and all that sort of thing. But I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't driving any nails.
I miss Ralph, don't you?
Oh yeah.
How are they related to Charlie Cartwright? You know Charlie out on New Hope? Is it New Hope Road? New Hope?
I don't know Charlie Cartwright.
Charlie Cartwright was Ralph's cousin. And so he had to be related to you somehow. How were you related to Ralph?
His cousin.
First cousin?
Second.
Well, I think he was Charlie's first cousin. They looked alike.
Well, see, Ralph had 2 brothers, Jack and Denny. That's all the family that Toots, as his mama's nickname, Toots. And
Ralph and Denny. Well, I wonder how Charlie fits in there.
I don't know, but he would not be, he wasn't Ralph's brother. and it wasn't Dennis or Jack's son, so it must have been Ralph's daddy's brother's son.
or sister's son.
Yeah, it might have been brother, because sister would probably not been, Cartwright wouldn't have been the last name. She'd have been married to somebody else. It's probably Ralph's daddy's brother.
Ralph was long time Democrat, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Was he a Reagan Democrat?
No. His hero was Harry Truman.
Would he have been for the regime today, the Democratic regime, or would he have?
He probably would have. He was a little bit of a racist. He might not have been for the Obama administration. I don't know that.
But he would have probably voted straight Democrat no matter what. If I remember.
No, he, I won't say who because they're local people, but there was one Democrat running and Ralph didn't care for him at all, and he just didn't vote, didn't go. Mm. He didn't vote for the Republican. And his hero, you go over at Ralph's house, and he and Wanda Dean had a little table that the two of them ate at, just two lived there. And up on the wall above it, he had a copy of the newspaper framed that said Thomas Dewey beat Truman. You know, they thought Thomas Dewey was going to win, and Truman won. He had that framed. Truman, now the way I could really get him going is I'd tell him, I'd say, you know, if Truman was running today, he'd be a Republican. Oh boy, he'd just come unglued. And he was on the football panel. You know, we started a football panel show in 1961,
that's right.
And it's still going. As a matter of fact, we record tomorrow afternoon for this coming Friday. But anyway, he couldn't say Sequatchie, like Sequatchie County. Uh-huh. They had a football team. Uh-huh. And so they put it on there on purpose.
So he had to say it.
And he'd say, if they were playing Marion County, for instance, instead of saying Sequatchie was going to win or lose, he'd say Marion County to win.
Only because he couldn't say the word.
He couldn't say it.
Do you study up on this, your program? What time do you go tomorrow?
5 o'clock.
So do you study up on it, or do you just kind of think about it on the way there?
No, I study it.
An hour or 30 minutes?
Not long. But
you
read the paper and you see who they played the week before, and you kind of know the team that's doing well, and you know the team that's not doing well.
So it's not off the cuff. It's a little bit of a...
Yeah. I'm in last place, so I'm not doing too well. Eddie, I won it last year.
The stuff you were on, you've been on it. For the stuff you did and were on, you did and were on it for a long time. You must be a pretty contented type spirit.
Well,
Does that make sense?
I'm happy if that's what you're asking.
Because you've always been on boards.
Well, I enjoy that.
Played golf for 20 years. You've been on that thing for 61 years. Been on Cleveland Utilities for 15 years.
Well, here's the way I look at it, and I don't want this to sound corny because it's not. But my mother was my driving force. Now, my dad was a great guy, but he's kind of rough around the edges, and he's a policeman, and nothing is wrong with that. But he wasn't a real go-getter. I mean, he worked every day and made a good living, and we lived okay. But he wasn't looking for a new adventure, a new company, none of that. Now, my mother, she was a miller, and I found out later that the name had been changed from Mueller to Miller, and they were Jewish.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I told that to Liars table one morning, and McIntyre said, you didn't have to tell us, we already knew that. But anyway, so I feel this way, and my mother always taught me, if you have done all right, you need to give back. You don't just need to keep digging and trying to feather your nest a little better and a little better and a little better. Give back to your community, because everybody can't give back. And so I've tried to do that, and I can't give back money. Now, I've got enough to live on. I don't mean that. But I've got time, and I've had experience in some areas that, you know, I served on the boys club for 30 years. I've been on life bridges for 37 years. I established the community corrections program when I was county mayor. I'm on the selection committee at the Old Timers Hall of Fame, and I just got appointed last month to the Bradley County High School Hall of Fame Selection Committee. We meet and vote on our first class to go into that Hall of Fame the 14th of this month. And I don't know, I've served on all the building committees at my church. We've had 4 additions, and I've served on those. I just...
Plus on the board of the Meigs County Sportsman's...
Tri-County Sportsman's League. Oh, that was a fun thing.
Yeah.
That wasn't much giving back. That was taken. Oh, we went down the river. Old Harlan Painter and I did one Saturday morning. And as we started back, I said, that looks like old so-and-so's boat over there against the... I said, he may be having trouble. He's over there tied to the bank. And I'm not going to say who he is because he was an office holder at the time. We went over there, and he must have had a case of empty beer cans in the bottom of his boat. And Painter said, man, don't you know that if the game warden comes up through here, they'll get you for driving under the influence just like you were in your car? He said, they're not going to see me. I said, well, we did.
Yeah.
And so Painter said, I'm going to get in the boat with him. You drive our boat on to the boat dock, and I'll bring him. So we get up to the boat dock, and I backed the trailer down there, and we got our boat loaded. Well, we got his boat loaded. Well, he couldn't drive home. So I said, Painter, I'll drive him home, and you, because it was in Painter's car, and you drive your car, and I'll drive him home. And so we did, and he made it all right. But we used to have a lot of fun over there, and there was some times when some adult beverages were consumed. And
It's a long ways up there when you have to go all the way to shortstop and take a right. It's pretty good. It's, what, 35 minutes or something?
Yeah, but that's not far when you're going fishing.
I guess not.
No, we'd be over there when the sun came up and be loading up as the sun set.
Good times.
Oh yeah. We'd have fish tournaments and I had that cabin over there, and Bill Teen could do this calligraphy signs, you know, and she'd make little trophies and letter them and out of wood, you know, like a little whatever for the biggest fish and most fish caught. And we'd have a tournament and have a lot of good food, have some steaks. And
You've had a lot of good friends over your life, haven't you?
I have. Hopefully still do. Yeah.
Do you think friends back then were closer than friends are now, or is it all the same?
Friends of friends.
Friends of friends?
Yeah.
Well, you're a good friend.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.